Kawhi Leonard is as quiet as a mouse. He gives you nothing, and it drives everybody crazy.
There's a weird fascination with how quiet Kawhi Leonard is, with how little he says, and with his apparent lack of emotion. And this fascination really boils down to the fact that he's an introvert. And despite studies showing that up to 40% of people are introverts, this trait is still portrayed as odd, peculiar, and even undesirable in sport. Because of how sport is forever becoming an entertainment spectacle, there is more pressure than ever for athletes to embody the desired media personality, being super charismatic, enthusiastic, and outgoing. It makes people think extroversion is better and more desirable, perhaps even a necessity to make it to the big time. But what if Kawhi Leonard's success on the court is actually because of his introversion? Well, this video will look at Kawhi Leonard to explain 3 benefits of being an introverted athlete. Firstly, let's quickly break down what we really mean by introversion and extroversion. There's a lot of misconceptions about introversion. People often think that introverts are antisocial and they don't like people whatsoever, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Introverts value social interaction just as much as extroverts, but they just prefer different kinds. The extrovert loves being the center of attention and gliding from person to person at a party and being part of big groups, whereas the introvert can have an equally great time at the party just sitting in the corner having 1 or 2 deep conversations with people one-on-one. The extrovert is someone who gets their energy from being around other people, whereas the introvert gets their energy from spending time alone. And the thing with introverts is that they also tend to be more in touch and aware of their internal thoughts. So how do these traits give someone like Kawhi Leonard an edge on the basketball court? Because wouldn't they actually be disadvantages? Because basketball is a team sport where you're surrounded by so many other people, many of whom have very large egos. Well, no, because when you break it down, a lot of the key markers of being an introvert can actually make the pathway of becoming an elite athlete a lot more easier to navigate. And here are 3 reasons. Despite basketball being a team sport, any pro will tell you that in order to reach the top, you have to spend thousands of hours on your own, just you, a ball, and a hoop. Kawhi Leonard was known to put in 5 AM workouts on his own at the gym during high school before the school day kicked off. I know we now live in a culture obsessed with waking up at that time to hustle and grind, which by the way is ridiculous if you're sacrificing sleep to do that, but getting teenage boys to wake up around 4 AM to then hit the gym at 5 AM, that's a near on impossible task most of the time. But introverts have less of a desire to always be socializing, so they're not going to be up all night hanging out with friends or messaging them. This naturally gives them more time to focus on other things. Because of not needing stimulation from others, they actually find it enjoyable getting a before dawn workout on their own. They find it much easier to just shut themselves away to focus on completing a task or objective. Kawhi often gets accused of being a robot, but in actual fact, he just has laser focus on getting the work done, because he's not looking to be around anyone or to impress anyone. While group workouts are important, they often don't allow you to properly zone in, and there's too much chatting and joking around, and introverts just don't need or want that, so instead, they just put the work in. Now this is a direct follow-on from the previous point, but because Kawhi Leonard is an introvert, he's far less likely to suffer from unnecessary distractions. Introverts are just not wired for gossip or making efforts to grab people's attention in the same way that extroverts are. So it's no surprise that Kawhi Leonard pretty much has 0 social media presence other than 4 tweets in 2015. It's actually crazy to think that one of the world's best players in a sport doesn't have Instagram these days. But this again could be one of the reasons why Kawhi is so good on the court. He's not likely to ever see the mounds of social media hate that unfortunately comes the way of athletes these days. Just think of all the pandemic P-posts and memes that Kawhi's teammate Paul George faced during the 2020 playoffs. Those took a clear mental toll on George, who ended up suffering from depression and anxiety during that period. So in a world where everything is now scrutinized, it's actually helpful to be an introvert because you're not going to buy into all of these unnecessary distractions. Kawhi's desire to keep himself to himself just allows him to focus on the one thing that truly matters: playing basketball. He's not spending hours crafting the perfect pre-game outfit, he just rocks up in a tracksuit and then does what he needs to do on the court. Now this is the greatest introverted strength that Kawhi Leonard has. There's a reason that he was the 2-time Defensive Player of the Year in the NBA, and no, it's not because of his hand size, it's because as an introvert, he's naturally super observant. Because introverts tend to process things more internally compared to extroverts who process things externally, introverts tend to see things that other people don't. While Kawhi's game has evolved over the past 5 years away from being the go-to defender, he still executes insane acts of defensive skill most nights. He makes blocks no one should even think of making, and pickpockets opponents in a way that leaves everyone on the floor thinking, how did he just do that? And yes, of course, his 11-inch hands and his 7'3" wingspan play their part, but his introverted mind is geared towards making split-second internal judgments about the smallest of details that can reveal an opportunity to make a steal or shut down a rising opponent. It's this advantage that let Kawhi as a 22-year-old kid easily shut down LeBron James, by far the standout star of the NBA during the 2014 NBA Finals. He wasn't distracted by the stardom of James that usually meant defenders would beat before games even started. Instead, Kawhi used his introverted observance to suss out what LeBron was likely to do, and in most cases, kept the King sat down with no chance of rising from his throne. So that's why being introverted has proved to be one of the key advantages for Kawhi Leonard to become one of the most dominant players of his entire generation. Thanks ever so much for watching. Give the video a thumbs up so it can reach other people. Let me know in the comments below if you've got any other recommendations for athlete case studies. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next video.